Every successful person carries an invisible force inside them that most people never talk about. It is not money, not luck, not intelligence, and not even talent. It is a form of inner energy that pushes a person to wake up, to care, to focus, and to take action when others remain stuck. Psychology calls this energy arousal. Most people misunderstand this word and think it refers to only one narrow meaning. But scientifically, arousal is much broader and much more important. Arousal is a level of mental and physical activation in the human body. It decides how awake you feel, how alert your mind is, and how ready you are to respond to life. When arousal is low, a person feels lazy, bored, and disconnected. When arousal is extremely high, the person feels anxious, overwhelmed, and mentally unstable. But when arousal is balanced, the human mind performs at its best. This balance is what separates ordinary lives from successful ones. In very simple words, arousal means how switched on your brain is at any moment. Imagine a light bulb connected to a dimmer. If the light is too dim, you can't see anything clearly. If the light is too bright, it hurts your eyes. But when the light is balanced, everything becomes visible and clear. Your brain works in exactly the same way. Arousal controls that mental brightness. When you wake up in the morning and feel sleepy, your arousal is low. When you are interested in something, your arousal increases. When you are scared, excited, or under pressure, arousal goes even higher. This state is not an emotion by itself. It is the background condition that allows emotions, thoughts, and actions to happen. Without arousal, human life would stop functioning properly. You would not feel hunger. You would not respond to danger. You would not feel motivated to improve your situation. And you would not care about goals or responsibilities. Arousal is what tells the brain that something matters. It is a reason your mind says, pay attention or do something now. Even small daily actions depend on arousal. Getting out of bed, answering an important call, preparing for an exam, or standing up for yourself all require a certain level of arousal. When this system fails, people fall into passivity, procrastination, and emotional numbness. Science has clearly proven that arousal is not an imaginary concept. It is controlled by real biological systems in the brain. One of the most important systems involved is called a reticular activating system, also known as the RAS. This system acts like an on-off switch for wakefulness and attention. When the RAS is active, you feel awake, alert, and mentally present. When it is less active, you feel tired, unfocused, and mentally slow. Brain research has shown that damage to this system can cause extreme sleepiness or even coma, which proves how essential arousal is for basic functioning. Along with brain systems, chemicals inside the brain play a major role in arousal. Dopamine is one of the most important chemicals involved. Dopamine creates motivation and pushes a person toward rewards and goals. When dopamine levels rise, people feel driven to act. Another important chemical is norepinephrine, which sharpens attention and helps the brain focus on important tasks. Cortisol is also part of the arousal system. In small amounts, cortisol helps the body deal with challenges and stress. But when cortisol stays high for too long, it damages mental performance and emotional health. These chemicals work together to decide whether a person feels motivated, focused, stressed, or exhausted. This is not philosophy. This is measurable neuroscience. One of the strongest scientific proofs of how arousal affects success comes from a psychological principle discovered in 1908, known as the Yerkes-Dodson law. This law shows a direct relationship between arousal and performance. According to this law, performance improves as arousal increases, but only up to a certain point. When arousal becomes too high, performance starts to decline. This explains why a little pressure helps people perform better, but too much pressure causes mistakes, panic, and failure. This law is still used today in education systems, sports training, workplace productivity, and even military psychology. It clearly proves that success is not about eliminating pressure, but about managing arousal correctly. In daily life, arousal controls behavior in ways most people never notice. A student who feels no pressure before an exam often fails because arousal is too low. A student who is extremely anxious may also fail because arousal is too high. The student who feels moderate pressure usually performs the best. The same applies to job interviews, public speaking, relationships, and decision-making. When arousal is balanced, the mind becomes sharp, confident, and effective. When it is unbalanced, people either freeze or collapse. Now, the important question is how arousal can make an ordinary person successful. The truth is that most people do not fail because they lack ability. They fail because they avoid discomfort. Discomfort creates arousal, and arousal feels uncomfortable. Many people try to escape this feeling through distractions, addictions, or constant entertainment. Over time, this avoidance lowers arousal permanently. When arousal stays low for a long time, people lose interest in life, feel hopeless, and stop trying. Psychology links chronic low arousal with depression, lack of purpose, and addiction. Successful people are not fearless or stress-free. They simply learn how to stay functional under arousal. They experience pressure, fear, and uncertainty just like everyone else. But instead of running away, they act anyway. They allow arousal to fuel action instead of paralysis. This is why two people in the same situation can have completely different outcomes. One feels pressure and shuts down. The other feels pressure and rises. The difference is not intelligence. It is arousal management. Famous psychologists observed this pattern again and again. William James believed that human action follows interest, and interest arises from arousal. Abraham Maslow noticed that self-actualized people remain mentally alive, curious, and engaged with challenges. Viktor Frankl observed in extreme conditions that people who lost emotional activation lost the will to live. These observations all point to one truth: meaning, motivation, and arousal are deeply connected. However, arousal is not a magical solution to every problem. It does not remove obstacles or guarantee success. What it does is provide the energy required to face problems instead of avoiding them. Without arousal, advice does not help, planning does not work, and opportunities are wasted. Arousal is the first step toward change. It gives the courage to start and the strength to continue. At the same time, too much arousal is dangerous. When people push themselves constantly without rest, arousal turns into anxiety and burnout. This is why balance is essential. Healthy arousal comes from meaningful goals, manageable challenges, physical movement, emotional honesty, and proper rest. Psychology does not teach us to destroy arousal, nor to chase constant excitement. It teaches us regulation. In the end, arousal is not something to fear or suppress. It is the force that wakes you up mentally and emotionally. An ordinary person avoids arousal and stays comfortable. A successful person understands arousal and uses it wisely. This is not motivation, and it is not inspiration. This is how the human mind is designed to work, proven by science and observed through human history.